Hey, what's going on guys? Daniel from ModBot here, and before we get into the video, I just wanted to say that GearBest hooked me up with a coupon code for you guys. Basically, it's $20 off this already really cheap 3D printer, so instead of $189.99, you get it for $169.99. The code will be in the description, so if you're interested, be sure to check it out. Also, this video build is going to be extremely quick. I didn't want to do a part by part, so I took like 3 hours of footage or more and compressed it to 25 minutes. This will not replace your guidebook. You might be able to look at some stuff on here that you may be confused on by looking at the book or the video from the factory. So let's get into the build. The first thing we need to do is create the actual mainframe. You do so by taking these 3 of the smaller black corner pieces, and you're going to stick a screw from the inside to the outside, and then you're going to use these things that look kind of like T-nuts, but they're not, and you're going to just kind of loosely fit them on there. Now, these things confused me because I thought like a T-nut, you'd slide it in sideways, then clamp it down. Well, when you slide the, like, whatever we want to call them, like wannabe T-nuts into the 2020 extrusion, you actually don't need to have them sideways. Just get them into the 2020 extrusion and they will clamp down. So I'll show you that in a minute here, but yeah, we're essentially going to do 2 on each side, so a total of 4 on the sides and 1 on the back like I showed in the video. You'll need to repeat this process 3 times since there is 3 corners and 3 aluminum pieces that will be being attached to them. And the last one goes on the back side of the plastic part. I took a little picture of that so that way you guys can see it. Again, just kind of fit them with your hands for now. There's no need to tighten them because you're going to have to fit them onto the aluminum part. Then you're going to need to take 1 long screw. Again, use the book to see exactly what screw. I didn't want to put down each screw length in the video. It would have taken way too long. And you're just also going to test fit this one in there with your hands. Don't clamp it down. You're going to need to adjust it way later on in the build. So like I said, just fit these little T-nut things sideways and slide it into one of the 9 shorter aluminum extrusions. It does take a little bit of work. They're like not exactly machined the best, but they work fantastically. So once you get it in, just use your hand to kind of clamp it down into place against the plastic, and then tighten those 2 screws now as much as you possibly can. And again, rinse and repeat essentially 2 more times until you have 3 of this exact same piece. It's not hard to kind of install these things, but I will say your hand will be extremely sore using these little Allen keys. By the end of the build, my hands were extremely sore from just clamping down things. So if you have like a better tool with the hand fit, that'd be great. Then we're gonna need to connect them all together. So easiest way is to kind of just slowly work them in one by one. And once you do get them lined up, it literally is just gonna take you kind of pushing on each side. You'll have to use some force. You don't really have to worry. The plastic is extremely durable. It's not going to break, and obviously the aluminum's not going to break, so just make sure you kind of fit them in as best as you can. And then once you tighten them with the little Allen key, each side that you tighten, just make sure you are pushing it so that way it doesn't pop out. Next, we're going to take 3 of these little, I guess, bearings or pulleys, and they're kind of difficult to get into place. You put the long screw through like I show in here, and then you balance the like bearing or pulley in between, and then you have to get a nut on top of that inside. So it's kind of easier to have the piece standing upright, that way the nut doesn't fall out when you try to put it in. And I just kind of used my fingers to kind of like maneuver it into the right spot, and then I just hand tightened it for now. But you will need to get, like, it's easiest if you have some needle nose pliers. I highly recommend having some needle nose pliers to tighten it down completely. Then, just like we did a minute ago, you're going to do the exact same thing, but with the 3 bigger plastic pieces. So you'll do 8 in total, 4 on each side, 2 on the back. It's identical to what we just did. But again, now this is going to be for the base, so it uses bigger plastic and 2 aluminum pieces. So do the exact same thing, just put them sideways, the little T-nuts, slide them into place. But again, this time we're going to do 2 of them. which just means more tightening with your hand. If your hand's not sore yet, just wait. It will be. But yeah, just do your best to tighten them. It's easiest to use the long side of the Allen key and then just using the shorter side maybe in the end to get some leverage to clamp them down. This is one of the more tedious parts of the build, I will say. Alright, and then the exact same thing like we did with the top. Line all three of them up once you've got all three of them you know, built or assembled, and just slowly push them into place. This one's even a little bit harder because now you're trying to get it to fit onto you know, multiple things with 2 aluminum pieces. But if you just take your time and make sure that you line up those T-nut things, it's not too bad. I believe in you. You got this. Next, we're going to take the 3 shorter stepper motors and just fasten these belt pulleys onto them. I didn't really leave much of a gap between the pulley and the base of the stepper motor. Hopefully it'll be fine. It seems like it's fine. I completed my build and things are moving correctly. Then you're going to need to make sure the plug is upright, and you're going to be putting 4 screws through the plastic corner pieces into the stepper motor. Use those little indents or grooves like I show right there to get the Allen key in a good angle where you can tighten them in. And again, in the end, you should have all 3 of them just clamped in, and make sure the plug is facing upright on those stepper motors. Then you're going to grab your hot end. You're going to undo the little screw. Make sure you tighten it again after so it doesn't fall out. But you're going to take the thermistor and the heat element out of the hot end, and you're going to grab this little horseshoe type thing to fit around the hot end and push it through. This is like the hot end assembly. And once you pop it through, go ahead and insert the 4 screws to lock into place. I just hand tighten them for now. You will need to fully tighten them in a minute here, but for now just kind of hand tighten them so that way you can get them all into place. Then we're going to take this little triangular sort of piece and put this on the bottom. Make sure you do it the same way as me. So if you see there's like a hole in the triangular piece, it needs to go the same direction that mine is. So hopefully that makes sense. Literally just use the visuals. I mean, you've got your book, but yeah, you should be good. Then you're going to go ahead and put the hot end back in, like the pieces you just undid from the bottom of it. You just have to take them off to be able to get the triangular piece on, and also make sure you clamp down all the screws, the ones from the triangular piece as well as the ones from the top that we just put into the hot end, the 4 of them. Then we're going to need to undo the 4 screws that are on the triangular piece and take this little 3D printed fan shroud and make sure it's pointing towards the hot end nozzle. And then just take those 4 screws and put them back into place. Be careful with them. I edited it out, but I dropped those little screws quite a few times. It takes some pressure to get them through the 3D printed part. Also, make sure not to overly tighten. You can get the screws in there nice and snug, but again, it is a 3D printed part that's pretty thin. You don't want to break it. Now we're going to grab the 2 fans. The first fan we're going to grab is just the more standard fan. This is the one that's going to cool our hot end. It fits onto the middle portion, and just insert the 4 screws and tighten them down. This is what's going to cool your hot end. Then we're going to grab the second blower fan with the hole in the bottom of it. Make sure the hole in the bottom is facing downwards into the actual hole in the aluminum extrusion. And you're going to take the 4 little screws and insert them in. Now there is a gap in between the fan and the aluminum housing, so don't over tighten them. I kind of show you a side shot here. If you over tighten them, you'll break the plastic tabs on the fan, which I almost did. So just tighten them, but don't overly tighten them. As long as you get them nice and snug, it's not going to be going anywhere. But yeah, see, there's a gap, so just don't tighten them to the point where you're bending those tabs. Next, we're going to take these little carbon fiber arms, and you're going to insert, it goes long screw through the carbon fiber arm. Then you're going to take these little metal, I guess, spacers, and you want the wider part to be on the outside, away from the carbon fiber arm. You should be able to see it in that shot. And then you're just gonna go ahead and insert all 6 of them. I hand tighten them first just to get them into place. And then afterwards I take the Allen key and just go ahead and clamp it down. And just again repeat that 6 times. Then we're going to do the exact same thing with the long screw and the washer or spacer. But we're going to take these 3 plastic things, and you drop a nut into the nut trap and make sure you hold it in there with 1 finger, and then same thing, just hand tighten it until it grabs the nut so that way it doesn't fall out. And then you can just take your Allen key and clamp it down, and then do the same thing to the other side. So 2 of the carbon fiber arms for each of those plastic parts. But just make sure you do clamp them down. You want them to be nice and snug. The instructions are then going to tell you to put a screw into the top of this. I took a pen and pushed the hole to clear the plastic from the molding. It wasn't exactly machined perfectly. So once you get the kind of leftover plastic out of there, the screw should go right into place. But I was unable to get the screw in without taking a pen to clear the plastic, so you might need to do that. Next, we're going to take the long aluminum extrusions and insert them into the 3 corners of the base assembly that we put together. Just try to get the aluminum T-nuts upright so that way you can get it to slide in correctly. It just takes a little bit of play. And once you get them into place, just go ahead and tighten them. There should be 2 screws for each of the aluminum pieces on the outside. Next, we're going to take these little nylon roller washers, and it goes screw through the nylon washer into this plastic assembly, and then a nut on the back. Again, easiest way is just to hand tighten it. I recommend that for a lot of this stuff. Hand tighten it, and then afterwards use the Allen key just to completely tighten it. It'll save your hands and wrist at least a little bit. So there should be 3 of them. Also, just be warned that this build will take you quite a while. On the back, you need to put a nut in the nut trap, and then put a screw through the side. It does say not to over tighten it specifically in the instructions for this part, so make sure you don't over tighten it. I tightened it enough to where the plastic touched each other, as you can see here, but I didn't overly tighten it. It says make sure you don't disfigure. It uses an interesting word. So then you're going to take the plastic part from before this on the carbon fiber and the part we just made, and you're going to basically attach them to each other using 3 screws. It's a little difficult. You just kind of best bet's to put the screw through and wiggle it around until it actually drops into place. And then I also don't recommend fully clamping these down until you've gotten all 3 in. It'll just make it easier to actually get the screws into where they need to go. Again, you're going to need to look at your instructions a lot. Pretty much everything I'm doing on here you have to do 3 times, but I was not going to be recording the video doing the exact same thing 3 times. It's already 25 minutes long, which is way too long if you ask me. But after that, we're going to go ahead and put these onto the 3D printer by just sliding the nylon wheels on to the long 2020 extrusions. Just take your time, it's really easy. You just line them up with the, I guess, grooves on the center. It was like 4 in the morning when I was recording this. I was watching Twitch, as you can see on the right screen. And the lighting, it's hard for me to get good lighting when it's that high up, so I did what I could, but a little bit of a struggle. So yeah, it should be on now. Next, you're going to take 3 of these little blocks and the screws as well as the T-nuts, and you're going to need to put them into place. It does have a recommended height, which I don't have off the top of my head right now. I'll put it in the video as like a text overlay. I used a tape measure to get an average, as you can see here. I just kind of put a tape measure down to where it needed to go and then inserted the block. Again, sorry for the terrible lighting here. It's very difficult to get lighting this high up in my room. I think I have a better screenshot of it. Yeah, so there you can kind of see it, how it looks when it's mounted into place. These are actually where the end stops are going to go. So that's the exact thing we're going to be doing next, is taking the 3 end stops and attaching them to these 3 blocks that we just put up. Careful again with the screws not to drop them, because if they fall, it's quite a long drop and there's a good chance that it'll bounce. So just use both hands to kind of get it. I think I might have hand tightened it as well, and then just taking the Allen key and clamp them all down into place. Next, we're going to take the top housing and just drop it onto the top of the 3 long aluminum extrusions. You just want it to be nice and snug, and then you're going to tighten it onto place by tightening the 1 outside screw like we did with the bottom. Again, it's really repetitive since we did this already. It should fit nice and snug. There's a bottom screw that you might need to adjust a little bit. It's hard to reference it, but we did put it in when we were building the top part of the frame. You can just loosen it or tighten it to ensure that you get a flat fit on the top. When you get there, you should know what I'm talking about, because there's literally only the screws on the outside and the one I just referenced. Then we're going to take the end stop cables for all 3 sides, and you're going to feed it down the center of the hole, or the center hole of the long 2020 extrusion, which is really nice for cable management. It's like one gripe I always have, is there's cables everywhere with these 3D printer builds, but they did a pretty damn good job of trying to minimize that. And then on the bottom side, just pull it out and feed it through the tiny little bottom hole under the stepper motor. And you're going to take these little plastic connector pieces, and you're going to feed the 2 cables from each of the end stops into one. And there's only one direction that they can actually go in. I mean, they'll go in any direction, but if you do it the right direction, once you push them past a certain point, they'll actually lock into these plastic connectors. That's kind of the best way I can tell you on how to know whether you're doing it correctly, is that when you push it in, it should actually lock into place and not just slide out. So then you're going to take the belt and you're going to cut it directly into 3 parts. So make sure you do that. That way you have enough belt for all of the 3 arms. And you loop it around this plastic belt and then kind of tuck it. Again, hard to say with words, easier to show via video, so hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing here. It literally just loops around like the little nub in this plastic, and then like that touches. So then you're going to feed it through the top of the printer around that smooth bearing or smooth pulley, as you can see me doing here. So it goes up, then tuck it back down through the other side. Then you're going to tuck it through the stepper motor like I did here. It needs to go around that bearing or the pulley on the stepper motor. That way when the stepper motor moves, it'll pull the belt, moving the axes. And then you're going to do the exact same thing on the bottom that we just did on the top. However, try to have some tension, like don't leave a lot of slack. Do your best to pull it so that it's as tight as possible. You don't want a lot of slack in your belt. That'll cause problems later on. So I did my best to kind of keep tension with one hand while getting the belt in with my other hand. And again, do that for all of the 3 axes. Then this little guy will help you get some more tension. It's really easy. You just put it above the little plastic belt tensioner or the belt holder that we just had, and you just take the one arm of the spring and tuck it behind the belt, pull the spring downwards, take the other arm and tuck it around the back. It's a little bit like difficult because there's a lot of tension, but what that does is it just creates a little bit more tension on that belt. Then take the last stepper motor and this little brass attachment. Again, the name's pulley maybe. That's what it'd be called, or bushing. I really don't know. But this part, and there's a tiny little gap, as you can see. I left a little gap. That's what it recommended. And then you're going to connect these 2 parts to it, just like I do here. They're both aluminum parts. And then insert the screws and tighten them down you just tighten them completely. Again, I use my hands to just get them into place, but then I use the Allen key to actually completely clamp them down. Next, you need to create this piece. Hard to explain, but basically it goes screw through the aluminum into a bearing, into, I'm sorry, it goes screw to the aluminum, to a washer, to the bearing, to a washer, to the aluminum. So look at your instructions on that one. It was way too difficult to get on video. Next, we're going to insert a little screw into the bottom of the part that we just put on the stepper motor. This is where the spring is going to be sitting on for the tension. As you can see, I also put a screw through this. We're going to be next putting this little arm onto the stepper motor on the bottom part of it. Again, the screw on the bottom that I'm tightening right now is also going to be for the spring. Then you just put the spring in between those two things, as you can see here, hopefully, and tighten the screw down. It's kind of difficult to get started because you have the spring trying to push it away. But once you get it started, then you don't really have to hold anything, and you should have pressure, as you can see here. This is what's going to be feeding your filament in. Next, we're going to need to actually mount this guy. It says there's no specific side which to mount it on. You just need to mount it on the outside, and it doesn't even tell you how far down it needs to be. It says look at like the picture in the front of the book. So I think I did mine a little bit below the halfway point. So it's towards the bottom, like I'd say like from the bottom to the top of the printer, it's like 40% up. But yeah, it says that there's no like specific, but just do something like that. Then we're going to attach the Bowden fitting to the top. Just hand tighten it. You don't have to use any tool. Hand tightening should be plenty good to get this into place. Then take your little plastic Bowden fitting, and all you do is just push it down into place. It should go down just by pushing it, and then once it's in, if you pull up, it shouldn't actually go out. So that's how you'll know whether it's fitted correctly. Then take the other side of it and just fit it into your top of the extruder, or the hot end, I guess I should say. Next, we're going to take this little aluminum part and we're going to attach it to the main board. Kind of an interesting setup. I'm not sure I'm crazy about it, but it does seem to work. Just don't over tighten these screws because you can definitely damage your board by doing this. So tighten them so that way they're snug, but do not bend your board. Then we're going to take these five of these little heat sinks and just undo the adhesive on the back and put them on the stepper motor drivers. After that, we're going to take 2 more screws and 2 more of those T-nuts, and we're going to attach the board onto the bottom of the base of the 3D printer. I chose the left side, but again, it seemed like it didn't really have a specific side, so you might be fine whichever way you go. It was easier for me to flip over the printer to actually access the screws and tighten them in, so you might want to flip over your printer to actually clamp these down. Next was not cable management, but the electrical part, which I couldn't and didn't want to show you guys. So literally just reference your picture. It has the text. It shouldn't be too difficult. It's really plug and play, and there's not a lot since there's no heated bed. Once you're done with that, then we are going to be doing the LCD screen, which goes screw through this aluminum piece. Then you're going to fit a washer onto the screw. Then it'll go through the LCD screen, followed by a nut to tighten it into place. Like that. And then I'll show the end result too, so you can see with the nut, because I don't show the nut in the video. But yeah, if you look at the end, so you got the 4 screws through the front, then it goes washers, then it goes through the board, and then you've got nuts on the back of all of them, which has it fitted correctly. Then we're going to attach this to the 3D printer using just 2 screws and 2 T-nuts. You just plug the cables in the back, feed the cables through the bottom middle, like the gap in between the 2 aluminum extrusions. And then again, just like we've literally been attaching everything, you're going to use 2 screws and 2 of those T-nuts and just fit it as close as you can to the middle. I already did it with mine. As you can see, there's still a little bit of wiggle, but it's solid. It's definitely not going anywhere. Lastly is going to be to take these 6 little plastic wedges and the little screw and the T-nuts again. You're going to do 2 on each side You're going to use these to actually hold the glass build plate into place. So just like I'm doing here, you put the glass and fit them and then clamp it down. I ended up having to do cable management before. There was too much cables, I couldn't get the glass down. But in the end, it should look like this with two plastics on each side holding the glass into plate. The last thing to do is to just take this little Anycubic bed adhesive and peel off the back and stick it on like I did here. Once you've done that, you have made it through the build. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next video will be a quality print test of this printer. Again, I'm really sorry for those of you guys that wanted a step-by-step build like I did with the Annette. That was just too much, and I feel like it was kind of spamming my channel with like 6 or 7 or 8 build videos. That's why I didn't want to do that. So hopefully this will at least help some people. It's not meant to replace anything whatsoever because it's not long enough, it's not detailed enough, and it's not accurate enough because I didn't say the screw lengths. You're supposed to look at your book, and if you get stuck, you can look at that video portion, and maybe something I said or something I showed will help clarify. So on that note, again, if you're interested in purchasing this printer, links to the printer as well as the coupon code will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in my next video. Peace, guys.